Kick us off.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third stop of the IIDA Oregon Chapter Virtual Design Crawl Series. I'm Jen Stone, Director of Professional Development on the IIDA Oregon Board, as well as the A&D rep for Arizona Tile. And tonight, we are going to explore the Masonic Grand Lodge of Oregon by Hennebery Eddy Architects with Ashley Norrid and David Wark. This project won Best in Category for Public and Civic Institutions at the 2019 IIDA Oregon Chapter Design Excellence Awards. We're super excited to have all of you tuning in and learn more about this great project. And before we get started, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors. We'd like to thank Mohawk Group at the Ruby sponsorship level, and then a thank you to Pacific WRO at the Diamond level. And then we'd also like to thank all of our 2020 annual sponsors, including Mohawk Group, Pacific WRO, and ZGF Architects at the Platinum level. We're so grateful for their generous sponsorship and continued support, so thank you so much. And if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to type those into the chat. Kids can help monitor those as we go, and we'll also have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, so we'll do our best to cover all of your questions then.
Thanks, Jen. Hello, everyone. My name is Kate Stewart. I'm the current president of IIDA Oregon Chapter and an interior designer at GBD Architects. Thank you so much for joining us on our final stop of the virtual design crawl. As Jen just mentioned, please type any questions that you have during the presentation into the chat, and I will help moderate those questions to our speakers. I'll let Ashley and David introduce themselves now, and then we'll kick off the project presentation. Ashley, take it away.
Well, thanks, Kate and IIDA Oregon for having us here this evening. We are excited to be the third and final stop on the annual design crawl. And we're also a little bit excited to get out of town today and travel to Forest Grove. So I am Ashley Norrid, interior designer and associate at Hennebery Eddy Architects. And we focus on a variety of different market sectors, including the civic and cultural component, which really intrigued us about this project.
And I'm David Wark, a principal with Hennebery Eddy Architects, and have a background in library design and in addition to historic preservation and higher education. So pretty varied background, but we'll talk about the library and hybrid slash museum in more detail, but why it's an interesting project, why we even wanted to be part of that project.
Ashley, ready to share your screen?
Yeah. Give me 1 second here. All right. All right, Dave, do you want to take it away?
Oh, sure. Well, this is a little snapshot of the south entry elevation of the library and museum. We'll talk about that. And the client was the Grand Masonic Lodge, Masonic Grand Lodge of Oregon in Forest Grove. And they've been around for quite some time, maybe over 100 years. And the design team at Hennebery Eddy was myself, Doug Reimer, Ashley, who you've met, Josette Kacha was also an interior designer, Joshua DeJong, Alexander Lungerhausen, and Nick Byers. And consultants and contractor, we worked with quite a few times, KPFF consulting engineers for structural and civil, interface engineering for mechanical, electrical, plumbing, security systems, data, IT, etc., and Walker Macy Landscape Architects, and PDG Construction Services were the contractor. So next slide we want to go to. Ashley, you want to go to the next one?
Yeah, is it loading for you guys?
Yeah, there it goes. So this project has about 6 elements to it that were important. And I guess the first thing is what does anyone know about the Freemasons? If you're anything like Ashley and myself and our team, it wasn't a lot. So we had to kind of inform ourselves about them and talk with them about what this project was about. And a couple of things that they are not, they're not a secret society and they're not a cult, and but they have a lineage of course, many of you probably know, the Masons Guild in the Middle Ages, and it evolved into a more social organization for the betterment of communities. And the cornerstone of the organization is just that, charitable work and philanthropy, including children's hospitals. You may know those as Shriners, and all Shriners are Masons, but all Masons are not always Shriners. So a little known fact there. But specific to this project is their community service, supporting literacy, education, and serving as a venue to host their student assistant program, which holds workshops for school administrators and teachers to help at-risk students to stay in school throughout Oregon. So that is part of the service aspect of this project. The other part is a memorial to Robert M. Richmond, who was, I guess, quite a character. I never did meet him. He had already passed away. But he was held in high regard as a community force with Freemasons and his philanthropic efforts. And so that part of it. The museum part covers the history part, which is, you'll see in the photographs to the right in this photograph is a small museum area, which has a lot of artifacts and information about the history of the Masons. Actually, I can't see quite the bottom of this slide. Can you?
Yeah, can you guys see everything?
No, I can't see the bottom three elements. There we go. All right. As I talked about, I still can't see them for some reason. What the heck? Community.
Can you guys see things?
I can see it when
I
my
don't know.
mouse isn't hovering on it.
Yeah. So community, we talked about it a little bit, but this is a public facility and it's open to everyone, including people that might have a community event related to charity and nonprofits. And then as a sanctuary, that a place that people could just come visit and exhale, so to speak, that they could just relax and be there and not do anything. They could be there and do research. They could do their own work. It is free and as a gathering place, informally and formally. So those are the 6 aspects of the project. Once we understood them, that we really embraced the project and decided to move forward with the Freemasons on it. So next slide. And as we got to know them and their program for the building and the site, this concept, which maybe logically, obviously, would start with the brick. And so the solid hash rectangle represents a brick. And then the idea that the middle of it is carved out for the library aspects of it. And so at the heart of this building, it is a library. And then around that middle part, carved out again from the brick is our support spaces that are for people. And the corners are left as support spaces for storage of the rest of their collection, mechanical, electrical storage, and restrooms. And then in the middle line, this idea of symbolism. Many of you may know that the Freemasons are really strong on symbolism in their organization. And so looking at rose windows from the Gothic era, the Ionic order here, and the 5 orders of the classic orders, and then trying to incorporate those within the building and within the design. And so Ashley, you're going to cover that last one, aren't you?
Yeah, and our concept for the interior finishes was really honoring the natural materials and integrating the balance and simplicity that is so inherent to Masonic culture, and expressing the brick and the exposed timber of honors some of that craft and that construction.
And just some initial concepts as we kind of understood what that concept diagram, and then applying it, initial form idea of this simple building with copious amounts of natural light and also simplicity. They were very conservative in the type of building they wanted. So they had given us images of buildings in Eastern Oregon that were very, very classical buildings, literally with ionic columns on them. And so there was a discussion about, is that really the type of building that they want for this project and for this site, and for communicating who they are, et cetera. And they actually agreed that they didn't necessarily need that to be as literal. And so it became a simplified building. And then the idea that the lawn to the left on the bottom diagram is the foreground, and this the growing, and that the building opens up to both of those in equal parts. And a little more refined diagram. You can see the grove around it. And then they have a very administrative building is on that upper left part of the diagram. It turned out the lawn was a little decreased with this driveway, so the diagram isn't quite doesn't match reality in some way.
And so
It was translated pretty strongly. Hello? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, David, I think we're losing your audio. Can you hear
My
us?
audio? Oh, am I here now?
You're here.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead here?
Yeah, so that carved concept that David talked about creates kind of this central library core where events are happening, the library occurs, and it further creates these perimeter spaces that are carved out for the reading room, the meeting area, offices, and creates these 4 pillars on the corner that serve to ground the building. They're wrapped in the exterior brick around all 4 corners. And that translates to our section views here, which communicates the large volume of that center gathering space, coupled by the adjacent lower volumes that provide areas for a little bit more intimate gatherings or individual activities. And these two combine together to what we like to say is our big little building. And although it's a small building in size due to the construction and kind of these large, simple volumes, it creates more of this monolithic space that honors some of the timelessness of the Masonic craftwork. The significant glazing on the curtain walls, as well as the clear star windows, allows natural daylight to penetrate all the way through the space, which really allows great views to the adjacent oak groves, but allowed us to achieve some important sustainability goals as well. And we were able to do some extensive daylight modeling as well as shading studies that you're seeing here through Autodesk Insight 360. And this initial shoebox model was able to help inform our design process and get us below a really good target EUI. So that's the energy use intensity. And we're targeting right now 61% below the baseline. So for reference, Architecture 2030, I believe, was 70% in 2019, last year when the building opened. So we are getting fairly close, just with some kind of low-hanging fruit measures alone and some passive strategies.
And then the flexibility of this space, we knew that we had to accommodate up to 60 people in a meeting relative to some of their programs. The one I mentioned, the student assistant program in particular, where they invite teachers and administrators from across the state for a 3-day workshop. And so this, the day-to-day aspects of the central area are set up as a library. And then in an event like this one, this was opening day, and so they're having some of their ceremonies that are dedicated to opening new buildings. And so this is just one setup for this type of event. There's also you know, panel discussions and multiple tables and chairs set up. So it's a very flexible space that does triple duty for different types of functions on a day-to-day basis, on an event basis.
And our concept for the interior design of the space is intended purposefully to be simplistic, honor some of the Masonic and classical architecture traditions, and allow the building to speak for itself, incorporating some clear geometric forms, minimal ornamentation, and kind of a simplistic materials palette really achieved this balance of simplicity and a little bit of tension with some of these cool neutrals that you're seeing juxtaposed with the warmth of the wood and the natural materials. And our finish selection was also very purposeful in that sustainability was something very important to the project, as well as our firm's design process. So we prioritized interior finish materials that had product declarations and transparency labels, such as environmental product declarations, health product declarations, and declare labels, to name a few. So it really goes to show you that even with a palette that is somewhat pared back, those sustainability goals are fairly simple and easy to achieve. Our furniture concept was also created out of this idea to curate a family of like furniture, and that would allow continuity throughout the space in the building, where the lounge chairs and the tables in the reading rooms, as well as the tables in the museum spaces, kind of all of the same family. And we wanted to prioritize not only that, but comfort, durability, as well as local manufacturers. So this lounge chair that you're seeing right here is actually crafted by Portland maker Revolution Design House. So it was really wonderful working with them. And it kind of linked up some of that Masonic craftsman history with that local craftsmanship. And what you're also seeing here is that little wood stump peeking out between the two lounge chairs. That is actually wood that is salvaged from the site, which David will get into.
So some of the materials didn't have far to go from site to the building. They made a kind of a circular journey. There were a couple of trees that had to be removed, and as we were removing them, we saw that there was more kind of decay internally than we had anticipated. We were actually going to use this white oak in larger slabs and use it as more like wall cladding, wall panels, but there just wasn't enough to do that. So the idea on the fly was, what can we do with this wood that would be would serve another purpose. We had been designing these screens that would be somewhat open, but also separate the main library space from these wing spaces. But and so we landed on this idea of actually replicating the brick from the outside in white oak. And so these screens are composed of small blocks of white oak that were cut and cured and then assembled, pre-assembled on site, I think pre-assembled off-site and brought on in different sections, and then totally assembled on site. And so there's a lot of detailing, a lot of time that went into the execution of this, from coordinating the wood and selecting the wood to detailing the connections to installation. And we really enjoy this because it's just sort of like this Oregon play on masonry that we really like. Oregon being, of course, wood-centric, forest-centric, and reinterpreting that into more of a symbolic brick for this project. And so we were very happy the way it came out. These these blocks, these wood bricks are not perfect by any means. And that's actually fine. The imperfections actually give it more character, and we embrace the imperfections. It just gives it what we thought of a little more character to the whole project. Yeah. And this is a shot behind to the east of the wing from the library area, the core. And just to kind of go back a second with the concept, the core of the building is the library, and that's where the wood floor and the wood screen, so it's more of a wood encased space. And then the others are more about a combination of wood and brick and carpet. And the approach was something sort of, we kept kidding ourselves in some ways, kidding each other, this Masonic monastic approach, that there's this simplistic, not simplistic, this simple pared down set of colors and materials. There are two types of wood in the project. The structure is Doug fir, and all the other wood, including the furniture, is white oak. And so, including these tables, and these are the same tables in the museum that are in the library. So we just felt that introducing another type of table and another base was just too much for this small of a building. The whole building is 5,000 square feet, including all the storage and mechanical spaces. So quite a small building. But as Ashley mentioned, it has this presence about itself that belies the fact that it's small. It feels big, it feels airy, and it flows. And so the feeling when you're in it is something different than the numbers, which we really like. And just so in the museum part, we designed these cases to go on the tables here, which are just wonderful cases. Again, actually, I can't remember the firm in Germany that did these.
I believe Caseworks.
Yeah, just a great firm to work with. The German engineers were just everything you'd expect them to be, right? And so they're just, they basically pivot, the whole uppercase pivots, and then it has lighting in it, and we highly recommend these. And so we didn't have much to do with curating the exhibits, but these were put in place for that opening ceremony that you saw, and they've gone back and refined this, but they have a lot of gavels, as you can tell. And so, and some very interesting ones, you know, a deer horn gavel and some others, but they are very proud of their heritage and where they've come from and who they are and what they do. And so this is just a way to tell that story. You can see a little bit more here. There are 3 of those horizontal display cases on 3 tables, and then 2 larger display cases. With each of those glass panels are actually doors that you can open, so it's really easy to access and change out the exhibits from time to time. And then on the far left is our thin pieces of white oak from those trees again, that is actually stacked like stack bond brick, and the same size as the brick, but that's the donor wall for the building. And so they've been putting names on those since the completion of the project. And then their collection in the middle part is composed of historical publications, Freemason centric publications, suitable for research. And this wing is primarily donated books of a popular collection type. And anyone can come in and read these books. And I can't remember if you can check them out or not, but definitely can read them when you're there. And they're composed primarily of nonfiction books, of biographies and historical publications. So that's how they organize this. And then on top of the bookcases throughout are particularly interesting publications, historical documents that are changed out from time to time. And if you go one time and you'll see some documents and books, and you visit it again and you'll see other ones.
And so some of these symbols and motifs that we've talked about throughout the past few minutes here really culminate to the east and west glazing on the exterior of the building. And that translates to the design you're seeing here. It's a ceramic frit on the glazing. It provides a little bit of privacy, but also some passive ways to prevent solar heat gain. And most importantly, as a design feature with the adjacent oak grove, it addresses some of the bird safe design aspects as well. So the north and the south also feature some small frit dots that help address that bird safety as well. And these designs also allow you to continue to connect with the beautiful setting that is the Masonic Grand Lodge. And with that, we are happy to take questions.
Great. Thank you, Ashley and David. We got one question here already from Hannah. She was wondering, at what point in the architectural process did you start working on the interior design? So at what point did Ashley come in, and did you really start working out the space planning? And
yeah, well, that's a great question. I think maybe it warrants a little bit of a backstory that this initially started as a 2-story building. And after, I think we got to about CDs, and they said, okay, we need to readdress the space that we have here. Let's revisit our budget. Do we need this much space? And it turned into a 1-story building. So with that, I was involved in the entire process. I believe the 2-story building, I came in, I want to say maybe sometime in SD. Gosh, it's been a few years ago now. But David and I worked closely together to develop the interior space and have some continuous meetings with the clients to really understand their needs and what their big takeaways were for the project.
okay. Another question here. Is there a particular moment in the space that you're especially proud of, a design moment that you're most excited about?
Most excited about? Well,
Proud of.
I have to say, Ashley, you should give your opinion on this too. For me, I was in there on a overcast day, and none of the lights were on. You didn't need them to be on. There was plenty of natural light coming in, and then it started to clear up a little bit, and I could see light coming in, you know, from the south, the clear story, and it's one of those spaces that you when you go into, you just exhale, and your blood pressure goes down, and you start to relax, and there's just a quietness to it. Not to say that we haven't done, you know, more exuberant design, because we have, but in this case, it just felt more appropriate to have this quiet, understated, some people might call it timeless, and it might be timeless in the sense of from day to day when you're in there, that you might even lose track of time when you're working on something. And so I'd say the quality of the natural light is one of the most prominent aspects of the building that I enjoyed about it.
I think one of my favorite features is the story of salvaging the wood on the site and how it translates to different pieces throughout the building and tells a different story depending upon where you are in the space. And incorporating that same material, albeit not local, it really created this connection between the oak grove that you're able to directly see from the outside to what's happening on the interior of the building.
Mm-hmm. Well, another question. What was the most challenging part of the project? I know there's many challenging parts of every project, but is there one that stuck out for you?
Well, as Ashley mentioned, there was a two-story design, right? And actually, we got through construction documents 100%.
That's right. Uh-huh.
And then they had a change of leadership and perspective about it. And so the most challenging part was taking a two-story building and everything in it and putting it in a one-story building. And so that was at the heart of the multiple uses and the flexibility of that central space. Because in the two-story design, we actually had a separate events room and a separate library. And so in some ways, this actually, I think, square foot and the amount of work each square foot is doing, this is a better design in that way. And so that might have been the most challenging moment, is actually programming and how to get it to be a big little building.
Okay, another question. Are there any solutions that presented themselves right away to you?
Brick. Yeah, right. We were going to use brick. We knew we were going to use brick. So we knew the primary exterior material would be brick, since it's the Freemasons. You know, we were thinking, this is another, I think, difficult moment when you go through, you know, dozens of options on that brick. We looked at, okay, what are the patterns? What's the color? What, you know, and then in the end, we just kind of backed off and said, it just needs to be simple. It just needs to have a richness to it. And so I think that was, while that's not the answer, it's the opposite answer of what you asked me, but the obviousness of the brick and then the not obvious nature of the simplicity of the brick, I think we're kind of interesting relationship there.
Yeah, oftentimes those are the most challenging moments when you're trying to pare something down to make it the cleanest, most straightforward concept and approach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sometimes the simplest design is the most complicated for some reason.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point too. Is when something is simple, then the details have to follow that, and can't betray that approach, because if the detail isn't simple, then it can compromise just the overall composition.
Okay, one more question, and I might know the answer. Where did you draw inspiration from besides the Mason's brick?
Well,
go ahead, Ashley. Yeah.
So the setting itself was an incredible inspiration to how especially the character of the interior space developed, and allowing that connection to the nature side of things, let that really speak for itself. And a fun moment, I remember that we were able to have a little bit of kind of creative juice flowing and just a little bit of stress relief was during our finish selection process. And we were trying to figure out, okay, now that we have these rich warm woods, what else do we want to incorporate? We started looking at the furniture and the finishes there, and we had this initial concept of something a little bit more tactile, and we were looking at mohair for some of the lounge chairs, and it was a really fun experience just to order all these different samples and see how soft they were. And if you're having a bad day, you just kind of go and pet that little sample, and just finding little pieces of joy as you're going through the process too kind of helps you weave in some of those moments into the space.
Stay inspired, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't think that's a wrap on questions. Not seeing any more come through, so I'll kick it over to Jen to say some final words. Oh, Jen, we can't hear you. You're muted. No. I can do the conclusion if you can.
How about now?
There you go.
Okay,
Yay.
sorry everyone. I actually saw Laura just typed in a question into the chat.
I see it.
Yeah, how engaged was the client in the design process, and was it collaborative?
Oh, that's a really good question. Yes, they were engaged, but they also allowed us to work through a process. And so they would kind of give us little bits and pieces of ideas here and there and gave us the time and the freedom to explore what those meant. And we'd come back and present, and they would either have, you know, some good comments to come back for revisions, but they trusted us in what our process allowed us to do.
Okay, one more question. Sorry, I think my chat was scrolled up or something. Did the interior designers curate the museum too?
So that was all the client curation. And they have quite an extensive collection that rotates seasonally, I believe, or as time allows. And initially we had talked about either creating a theme with things, and I'm not quite sure where it stands at this point today, but I do know that they enjoy switching out their collection to create something fresh and new.
Great. Okay, now I think we're ready to go. Jen, how are you muted again?
Am I muted now?
You're good.
Oh my gosh. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, I just want to say thank you to everybody who joined us this evening. Even though we're all distanced right now, it's still really fun to be able to come together and connect virtually. Thank you, Ashley and David, for that really thoughtful presentation. And thanks to Hennebery Eddy for their support and always doing such beautiful work. That is a wrap for our 2020 virtual design crawl series. So hope to see you all at the next crawl next year, hopefully in person. So everybody take care and stay well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Guys.